In the sweltering July heat of Philadelphia, on the 250th anniversary of American independence, France played a football match that left their supporters furious. Not because of the result, France won, but because of what was allowed to happen to their players for 90 minutes while a referee stood and watched and did almost nothing. 13 fouls, 0 cards. Let that settle for a moment. Paraguay committed 13 fouls against France in a World Cup knockout match, and not a single Paraguayan player was shown a yellow card. For the first time since the 1998 World Cup, the tournament France won on home soil, an opponent had played a full 90 minutes against Les Bleus at a World Cup without receiving a single booking. And the manner in which that happened has left fans, pundits, and football observers around the world demanding answers that the referee, FIFA, and the officials who assigned him to this match have not yet given. This is the story of the day France were targeted, protected by nobody, and left to find justice entirely on their own terms. To understand what made this match so extraordinary, you have to understand the situation Paraguay arrived in Philadelphia. They had already done the unthinkable. They had eliminated Germany on penalties in the round of 32, ending the 4-time world champions tournament in one of the most dramatic shootout victories in recent World Cup history. They had survived everything Germany threw at them, absorbed the disallowed goal controversy, and emerged with the kind of confidence that comes only from defeating a giant. Against France, the task was even greater. A squad containing Kylian Mbappé, already with 6 goals in the tournament, alongside the extraordinary combination of Bradley Barcola, Michael Olise, Ousmane Dembele, and the full creative arsenal of the European giants. Paraguay's plan was visible from the very first minute, and that plan, if one is being entirely honest, deserves a degree of respect. It was disciplined, it was organized, and it was deeply, intensely physical. They sat in 2 deep defensive lines, they closed space, they contested every second ball, and they fouled, repeatedly, cynically, and, for an almost unbearable amount of time, without consequence. Kylian Mbappé was the primary target, the France captain, a player whose combination of pace, skill, and intelligence makes him one of the most dangerous individuals on any football pitch in the world, was subjected to a succession of challenges that escalated in their intensity as the match wore on. The most striking came after the goal had been scored. After Mbappé had already converted his penalty, already secured France's passage into the quarterfinals, Juan José Cáceres delivered what multiple analysts described as a deliberate kick on the French captain, a clear, undeniable act of frustration, an action so visible it required no slow-motion replay to identify. The referee, Ilgiz Tantashev, stood and watched. No card, no word of warning, nothing. The live match commentary, barely concealing its disbelief, noted the moment in real time with language that stopped just short of complete incredulity. How that man had not been shown a card, the commentary observed, of Cáceres, beggared belief. It was not an isolated view. Former Premier League referee Mark Clattenburg, speaking from the broadcast studio, was direct and unambiguous. He described the referee's performance as incredibly poor. He pointed to a succession of moments across the 90 minutes where Tantashev had failed to stamp down on tactics that were, in his assessment, deliberately cynical. The kind of tactics specifically designed to break rhythm, disrupt confidence, and remove the individual brilliance of France's attacking players through physical means rather than footballing ones. The numbers told their own story. 13 fouls, 0 yellow cards, and France's captain targeted more than any other player on the pitch. Yet here is where the story becomes genuinely complicated, because it refuses to resolve cleanly in either direction. Because Paraguay did not win, because France did find a way through, and because the penalty that won the match was itself at the center of a controversy that Paraguay's coaching staff and a portion of the football world felt was no less questionable than anything that had gone unpunished in the other direction. Substitute Désiré Doué received the ball inside the Paraguay penalty area in the 65th minute. He turned, he drove toward goal. There was contact from Diego Gomez. Doué went down. Paraguay's players were instantly enraged. Their coaching staff on the touchline gestured furiously. Head coach Gustavo Alfaro pointed toward Doué with the unmistakable signal that, in his view, the young French forward had manufactured the fall. The referee initially waved play on, and then VAR intervened. The review was swift. Former official Andy Davies, analyzing the decision for Fox Sports, was clear in his assessment. The replays showed what he described as a clear trip, a foul, a correct penalty. VAR had not manufactured an outcome for France. VAR had corrected an error that the referee had made in real time. Tantashev walked to the monitor, studied the footage, and pointed to the spot. Mbappé stepped up. Mbappé converted, his 7th goal of the tournament, France's 150th goal in World Cup history, and a moment that sent Les Bleus into the quarterfinals. But the anger that followed the full-time whistle was real and visible from both sides. Tempers boiled over as the players left the pitch. The frustrations of 90 fractious, physical minutes in Philadelphia's July heat could not simply be exhaled with the final whistle. For France supporters, the fury was directed at a referee who had permitted their players to be repeatedly fouled without protection for the vast majority of the match. Mbappé targeted, Barcola pushed, Dembélé kicked, and through it all, Tantashev's yellow card remained in his pocket. For Paraguay's supporters, the grief of elimination mingled with the belief that the single decisive moment of the match, the penalty, was the product of simulation rather than genuine contact, that their team had competed honestly, had defended heroically, had come within a single controversial call of forcing the match into extra time, and had been denied by a VAR intervention that they saw as unjust. Two legitimate perspectives, two sets of supporters who felt the football world had failed to protect their team, and a referee who, on the evidence of this match, satisfied almost no one. That is perhaps the most revealing dimension of this story, because in a tournament already defined by controversy around officiating, the France-Paraguay match managed to generate fury from multiple directions simultaneously. And the one figure at the center of all of it, the referee, has received no public comment or acknowledgement from FIFA whatsoever. For a governing body that has been quick to issue statements about new rules, new technologies, and new disciplinary standards, the silence in response to the legitimate questions about Tantashev's performance is itself a statement, one that FIFA's critics will not allow to pass without notice. Here is what this match and its wider context reveals about the 2026 World Cup. The questions of fairness and protection that have been present throughout this tournament through disallowed goals, contested red cards, cooling breaks, and contested penalties have not disappeared with the arrival of the knockout rounds. They have intensified. Because in knockout football, every decision carries a weight that cannot be recovered from. There is no next match. There is no opportunity to correct what went wrong. There is only the result and the questions that linger behind it. France are through. They advance to one of the most anticipated quarterfinals of the tournament, a meeting with Morocco in Boston that carries with it the weight of two nations with deep emotional connections to this tournament and to each other. But they arrive in Boston carrying something else as well, the memory of a match in which their captain and their players were subjected to 13 fouls, several of which went beyond the boundaries of what competitive physicality can reasonably justify, and received protection from the referee that, on the evidence of the record, was negligible. That is not a minor concern. That is not a complaint to be dismissed as the inevitable frustration of supporters hoping for a different outcome. That is a question about whether the standards of protection afforded to France's players in Philadelphia were consistent with what any team at this World Cup has a right to expect. And it is a question that becomes more urgent, not less, as the tournament enters its final stages. Mbappe, for his part, said little after the match. He scored. He advanced. He leads the Golden Boot race with 7 goals in 6 matches, level with Messi on goals, ahead of him on assists. His football spoke loudly enough. But football at its best is not just about who scores more goals. It is about whether the environment in which those goals are scored is one that allows the best of the sport to be expressed, protected, and celebrated. Whether the rules that exist to preserve the game's integrity are applied consistently, fairly, and without favor. On July 4th in Philadelphia, with 13 fouls and 0 cards as its defining statistic, the France-Paraguay match raised serious doubts about whether that standard was met. France move on. Paraguay go home with heads held genuinely high after a tournament that far exceeded the expectations placed upon them at its outset. But the questions about what happened between the whistles in Philadelphia will travel with this World Cup long after the quarterfinals have been played and the champions have been crowned. And somewhere inside FIFA headquarters, those questions deserve a clearer answer than the silence they have received so far.